Everybody talks about homelessness. Cops have to deal with it every day. So what do they think about the problem? 3 lawmen sound off. And what should colleges do to hold down tuition costs? We'll hear from 2 distinguished professors with very different views right now on Inside OC. Inside OC is brought to you by...
Each new community 5 Point brings to life represents a promise delivered. Great neighborhoods are more than just places to live, they are places to connect. 5 Point is a proud sponsor of public television and community programming.
Chapman University is a proud sponsor of Inside OC and community programming. Hi, I'm Rick Reiff. Are some kids being priced out of college? We'll look at that question. But first, what do lawmen think of the homeless problem? We posed that question recently to the 3 candidates for Orange County Sheriff after the televised portion of their debate. It was good stuff, so we'll play it now. By the time you view this, the primary election will be over, and there could already be a sheriff-elect. But homelessness and how cops should deal with it will remain an important issue. So here are Under Sheriff Don Barnes, retired Sheriff Sergeant and current Aliso Viejo Mayor David Harrington, and Los Angeles DA investigator Duke Nguyen. What should the sheriff's role be, as you see it, in this homeless issue?
Well, I think, one thing that Dave alluded to in the last answer was the change in policy coming out of Sacramento that's created a lot of the challenges we are facing in law enforcement in California. So the homeless issue.
You're talking about the early release or the resentencing?
There's several different aspects. We have AB 109, which of course is state prison realignment. Those people, when they get released, reviolate, they come back to the jail. It's a different impact. Prop 47 in 2014 prohibits us from arresting people for violations that used to be felonies prior. And then we have Prop 57, which is a further release of state prisoners into our community, 89,000 statewide. And that's before the court ruling where they now have to allow the same provisions or release of sex offenders. 10 to 20,000 sex offenders now eligible for the same release. That's all resulting in this increased population and contributing to the homeless issues as well, not to mention the opioid epidemic. Prop 47 reclassified felony possession of narcotics.
So it is it's really, when you come down to it, I mean, it is an issue that falls square in the lap of the sheriff.
Of law enforcement and policymakers. It's not just solely the sheriff's problem to solve. We took a leadership role recently, but all the causal factors that led to that, and it's not just the riverbed that we dealt with, it's in Orange County everywhere. You talk to the municipal chiefs of police, Rob Handy in Huntington Beach, and Anaheim Chief, Interim Chief Julian Harvey, and Tom Casella in Orange. The homeless issue has gone crazy. It's not, the county didn't cause it. It's bad policy and release conditions that have contributed to it.
We should have fixed this problem years ago. Had we done that 7 years ago when I was working there and had a plan to fix it, because I was the bike sergeant in North Operations, and we had a plan to fix it, we were told no.
You were told no by who?
By the administration, by the current.
Was that Sheriff
By
Hutchins?
the sheriff, yes. By the sheriff, we were told no. So we didn't do it. So that problem was allowed to fester over the last 6 years. And the problem is now we're dealing with, it's like squeezing a sausage. Everything's shot out of both sides, and now
this is fascinating because I haven't heard. I haven't heard this before. So you were what was your plan as the bike sergeant?
What we did
did you want to do? How many? There were a couple.
There was like 4. There was about 4 to 5 people under every overpass at the time.
Okay.
This is the difference between a field level supervisor and a manager and executive's experience. So if this was a simple solution, then every other agency in Orange County failed, because every chief could have implemented this, every officer could have done this.
They could have.
They could have done this, and it would have just been, so everybody failed throughout the county with a very simple plan of just arresting and taking the services that didn't exist. Because that was the biggest challenge that we faced.
So you're saying from a management perspective, what was the problem with that idea?
I'm saying from somebody with 13 years of management and executive experience, the world isn't that clear. You have to look at risk mitigation, litigation, case law, all these other causal factors that contribute to it before you make a shoot from the hip decision just to go out and do something that seems simple on its face but has repercussions. A lot of the driving factors behind this was a lack of services within the county, and you can say that was a county systemic failure, but it's not the county's sole responsibility to provide these services. It's also the municipalities to be part of the solution as well. The services weren't there. Case law says you can't arrest people for simply being homeless.
That's not what the case law says, though.
It says you cannot arrest people for status violations unless there's services available for them to go to.
See, that's the problem. The real difference is between the real difference between a street cop and a bureaucrat is I don't hide behind case law. I figure out how to work around it.
I didn't hide behind it. We went on the riverbed and we took kind of the problem.
You clearly stated that it was a jurisdictional problem. There were jurisdictional problems,
and there was case law. The sheriff took a leadership role this past year. We got stakeholders to the table, and we dealt with the issue on the riverbed, and we did it without a court order.
You did it because a judge took you around and did it.
No, we did it without having a court and have an injunction or a temporary restraining order. We satisfactorily solved that problem and got those people off the riverbed. Now, it didn't solve homelessness. It dealt with one aspect of homelessness, and we're dealing with the other areas now throughout the county.
Okay. 700 roughly people were removed from the riverbed, 200 plus from the Civic Center. Where are they now? Because we know some of them sought help, some of them were put in hotels temporarily. That's almost 1,000 people. Where are those? I mean, if from your best surmise, and I'll start with you on this one, David, your best surmise, where are those 1,000 people right now as we speak?
In hotels in various cities throughout the county, costing taxpayers millions of dollars.
Okay, 1,000. That's where they are. What's your sense?
They're not in motels. There's only one motel contract remaining. It's in the city of Anaheim. Those were the 30-day solution. Most of them didn't see 30 days. Once we knew that there was a high service-resistant population on the riverbed, we satisfactorily got hundreds of people out of the riverbed into services. In fact, one of our greatest accomplishments was when we closed the riverbed, there wasn't one veteran on the riverbed. We had satisfactorily got all the veterans into services. But it was like a hole in water. Once you moved one off, somebody else showed up and the number wasn't moving. The county had the solution. We were actually down to 175 the week before they announced the motel voucher, and it went up to over 700 in a week. People were flooding back to the riverbed to take advantage of these motel vouchers. That was a temporary solution. It'll never be, I don't believe, ever replicated, but they're not in motel rooms anymore.
What's your best guess or surmise as to roughly, give me some rough numbers if you can, where are those 1,000 people?
Well, it was only 700. The 200
well, at the riverbed plus 200 something at the Civic Center.
Well, first I think the riverbed was a little different population than the Civic Center. I've heard people reference the Civic Center, that 100% of the Civic Center were narcotic addicted individuals because they had the courtyard right next to it. There were services adjacent to the Civic Center if they wanted them, but they can't go into
So where do you think, where are they now?
They're back in the community. They are service resistant people. Most of the people that went to the motels, we knew were going to opt out when given the choice for services. There is a percentage of populations, and some of them are have behavioral health issues, and that system throughout the state has failed.
So you think those 200 that were in the Civic Center, they're just somewhere else? They might be in a field somewhere or on the beach?
They're going to go wherever the path of least resistance is. It allows them to continue the life that they want to live, which is service resistant, leave me alone, let me use my narcotics.
And how about the 700 at the riverbed? What's your surmise as to where they've gone?
Well, and at the last week, 500 came from somewhere else to be on the riverbed. So I'm guessing those 500 who flooded back to the riverbed went back to wherever they came from. We had people who come from LA just to get a free motel voucher. We know that was the case.
Wow. So let me start with you, Duke. Some really not, specific things. What would you do if, let's say, you're the homeless czar and you have the ability to say, we'll put something here, we'll put something here, we'll do that. What would you do to address the homeless issue in Orange County?
Well, I would have spent that $700 million that we have for the infrastructure. I would have get a missions, a homeless shelter missions, and then we start having people staying there. And I work downtown LA, and I invite our two, Don and Dave, to come along with to go down to the old missions, or the skid row that we call them. There are buildings, infrastructure down there that will accommodate those thousands of people in there. You put bunk bed, you put in, you convert to rooms, and you provide a health service in the area, and all those people will never leave anywhere else. But that's where they're home. That's where they're willing to stay. Unfortunately, we don't have the infrastructure here in the county of Orange. But that $700 million, we can start by spending that $700 million and start an infrastructure.
I wouldn't model my solutions after Skid Row. That has been a problem that's been festering for decades, so I wouldn't model myself after that. Yeah, the South Orange County Association of Mayors actually met recently. It came up with a solution, and we were immediately shut down. So it's a problem. The NIMBYism problem it's an issue.
Just for the viewers,
Sure.
what was the issue? You guys came up with
so
something.
What happened was
what was it, and who shot you down?
The judge has threatened. David Carr's threatened to issue a TRO, temporary restraining order, against all of our ordinances, enforcing all of our ordinances.
Was this Silverado Canyon?
Yes, the Silverado Canyon,
right.
and he put that in the South Zone. So we selected it as a temporary facility, not for the whole problem. It was just a temporary facility. That's what he asked for, and we were shut down. So the first thing I would do is I'd make sure law enforcement stayed in its lane. Law enforcement's job is to enforce the law. It's not Don's job to go to the city managers and come up with a solution to where it's housed. That's not his job. His job is to make sure his deputies are doing their job. That's it. So that would be the first thing I would do, is make sure they're focused on what their mission is. Secondly, what I would do is you have to compartmentalize this problem, because you do have mental health people, then you have the criminals, and then you have people who are truly needy. The people who truly, through no fault of their own, are homeless. And we can help those people immediately. The county was sitting on, it's $200 million in mental health money they were sitting on not spending, and acted surprised when they found it. I think that's nonsense. You've got to put these resources in play. You've got to start helping these people. You have to provide wraparound services. Any kind of facility that you create or you find, it can't just be a shelter. Shelters don't work. All it is a magnet for people who want to come, stay a night, and then they leave, and they go right back to doing what they're doing. I guess
the issue comes down to where are you going to, you've got to put something somewhere. Do you have any thoughts? You mayors came up with Silverado, and that got shot down.
Correct.
End of story, or?
Oh no, we're continuing. We've actually, we used to meet only once a quarter. Now we're meeting once a month. We're meeting every few weeks. In fact, we're meeting in 2.5 weeks. Okay. We're meeting again to try to find some kind of solution to help the county with what it's doing. But we don't want to be made responsible for a problem that they basically allowed to fester. The Civic Center issue was in my opinion, that's a failure of Santa Ana's government. It's not my taxpayers' fault. My taxpayers did their job. Okay. We paid our taxes. We supported law enforcement. We supported the government, and they failed. And now they're turning their focus back on us.
Well, I'll tell you I'm not going to speak hypothetical. I'll tell you what we did do. And regardless how we got to this, a year ago, I took on the Santa Ana riverbed. I got stakeholders to the table. I got the municipal government proximate to the riverbed to the table and kept them there. And we started working together rather than opposition of each other, and stopped pointing fingers and started being part of a solution. And it did work on that part. Now we're replicating some of these things in different areas. So Dave's comment about having my deputies do their job, we have several homeless liaison deputies. We have a homeless outreach team that's being redeployed to South Orange County on the county's dime to get ahead of it. So we're going to have the informant posture, if necessary, to get there. I've already have a relationship with healthcare agency and have the outreach workers committed to being there. What we need is a city government to do what Dave has been talking about and find the locations in which we can have that entry into the wraparound services. The shelters are the first entry point to get in, to then marry them to services somewhere else. Until that shelter is available, we can't move the needle. Judge Carter has made it very clear he's not going to allow South Orange County to take advantage and relocate people into other service areas. They have.
The Fairview Developmental Center in Costa Mesa, should that be used in some way as a homeless facility? Just yes or no?
No.
I don't know.
It has been rezoned already, so it can't be, but it would have been a great location to use. And this is the challenge I think we have. We have all these disparate areas and nobody wants anything.
If something could be worked out there
I think that would be a great location.
You think that would be a good location?
Okay.
I don't think Costa Mesa thinks it's a great location.
Okay.
I don't think they do either, but at least Surveyo wouldn't think it was a great location either if it was in their county.
And how about, I'll ask and start with you, Don, this one was would Silverado Canyon be or have been a good location?
I think it could have been a location for a temporary. I also found a location that got rejected, and it was very similar. So I think that we need something somewhere, and this is what I think.
Now for the professors. Should colleges be run like businesses? Chapman University President Daniele Struppa and UC Irvine Vice Chancellor Emeritus Manuel Gomez tangled over that issue recently after the televised part of their discussion. We pick up as Dr. Struppa responds to an audience member concerned that some students are being priced out of universities. She noted that annual tuition at Chapman is almost $65,000, and UCI costs nearly $33,000.
So the number you're looking at is the sticker number.
Of course.
But the actual thing is that the 87% of our students enjoy scholarships, and the average debt of our students when they graduate is only $25,000, which is frankly a very reasonable debt after you gain an education like the one that you can get at Chapman. Our default rate is extremely small. It's only between 3 and 4%, which means only 3 to 4% of our students run into trouble into paying back the loans. And our number of first-generation students is constantly increasing. It's now more than 20% of our entering class. So we are talking about 320, 350, 400 students, first generation, most of which have financial challenges that we work with. So I know that the number appears scary, but in reality, we are doing a significant job and really working very hard together with lots of community organizations.
Totally.
Here in Santa Ana, the Nicholas Academic Center, they give a $5,000 scholarship to every student that comes. We match that, and when we build the package out of that to make sure they can come to us. That's to give one example.
You know the University of California also has the largest proportion of Pell Grant recipients of any university in the nation. Over 30%, and UCI has something like 40%. Incredible low-income students getting full financial aid. Nevertheless, the financial and increasing tuition of universities is one of the biggest problems facing all universities, all presidents. Every board that I've ever seen regarding higher education is wrestling with the financial dimensions of their enterprise, partly because of globalization. As globalization took place, the universities began to lose their prestige crown role within the state because the state no longer needed Massachusetts, Michigan, California, all these great universities were the crown of our states. As the reduction and erosion of financial support happened along with globalization and internationalization of higher education in some respects, the problem became worse because for low-income residents and for other people in this country, contrasted to us, where we could attend for $350 at the University of California or $400, a reasonable amount, and come out with no debt. Now, with the diversity of the population and with the inequality of income, it is a big stretch to make it into the university with regard to the cost, and it detracts a lot of people. One of the other issues regarding this, however, is the degradation of education and the quality of education, and it's working. People in the GOP, a recent Pew study indicated that 58% of the GOP now believe that higher education contributes a negative impact to the country. That's a quote from the study. 72% of Democrats, which is also scary to tell you the truth, no longer, 72% think it is positive, but the problem is higher education is losing its status and prestige that it has always enjoyed in the society. And part of that is, in my view, because of these are the institutions that are providing climate change data. These are the institutions that are in many respects challenging the current administration's perspective on the value of higher education. And it's having an impact. It's had an impact with the charter school movement on public K-12 education. It's degrading not only individuals, but it's also degrading our institutions.
But when an institution like higher education starts to suffer this, certainly yes, they have critics who will always be their critics. But yes, at some point, don't you sit back and say, well, maybe we are doing something wrong?
Well, I agree with that too. We should be doing better.
And there is a lot of wrong that is happening in universities. And I think, quite frankly, and I don't want to single out any specific university, but fiscal responsibility is not a very high priority in universities, and that contributes dramatically to the increasing cost of education. That's really people don't like to talk about it, but the use of workforce in universities is something that no other business model would work that way. So I think there are lots of things that academia deserves to be scolded for.
But the university is not a business. I want to make that sure.
Well, okay, that's the greatest mistake that one could make. University.
It is not a business.
It is a business and needs to be run absolutely like a business. It's not a for-profit business.
We don't produce widgets.
It doesn't matter. You're producing other things. You're producing knowledge. You're producing education.
And the cost
but if you don't run it like a business, you're going to do what's happening now. The university can't afford to. Why do we always fight at the end? This should be the beginning.
You are once again going.
Harvard University.
We are going to have so much editing to do the next few days because there's no way we're going to blow this right here. So we will get it in. And again, thank you for your question. An excellent question. Hey, don't shake hands yet. It's not over.
I love this guy.
Because I thought the question really got to one of the big problems is that, and perhaps ironically at a time when education, higher education is being more and more criticized, that the tuition just keeps going up. It keeps being more and more expensive. And so maybe are there some outside the box ideas? Everybody talks about online education as maybe having some impact, but I'm wondering, I've heard this idea of private equity. Instead of just as people invest in companies, private equity investors would invest in students. They would pay your tuition. And then you pay them a percentage of your earnings for the rest of your life. So you wind up on Skid Row.
Like that.
No, wait. Think about it. You wind up on Skid Row. They collect nothing. You become Bill Gates. Boom, home run. And you get a good job as an engineer or whatever. And I would think universities could control that somewhere. Well, you got to do if you want to come in and pay our kids tuition, you got to give some to the humanities, some here, and you set certain parameters. But suddenly, too, then the investors are going to say, you guys, you're wasting money here. Come on, bring that down. Is that a totally wild, crazy idea?
I would be very worried. Something like this. It would worry me because, first of all, as you pointed out, I'd be willing to invest my money in somebody who's going to get a degree in engineering. That's why we now have an engineering school. I would be more hesitant to make investment in other kind of discipline, but that's not what the country needs. That's not what it would create a bifurcation that would be, I think, really dangerous. The other thing, I think this really would commercialize the process in ways that I don't think is going to be healthy. For the
right now, a student gets out and the federal government's hounding them for money. So what's the difference if the federal government's hounding them for money or if some venture capital firm is?
Well, I think that the real answer to me is not to create this private equity system, though I'd be happy to hear more and see.
It's not a good one, I heard.
But to me, the real answer is to really have boards and management in university take a serious look at how they run their business, which some people won't consider a business, but
it's an investment. But it's certainly an investment. I mean, we're not customers. Students are not customers, even though I hate those terms. That's a business. Then your students are customers.
No, the customer to the university is the community. The customer of the university is the community, because university has fundamentally two major roles. One is educating students, and the other is creating new knowledge. Both of these things benefit ultimately the community.
Yeah.
And so I agree with you.
Maybe for a private institution, but the public institution belongs to the community. They're not the customers.
But that's
we
what
built
I'm saying.
It. The people built the University of California. It's a tax-based
Yeah, but the people pay the tax, they're going there and want to see what comes out of there.
Of course.
And I think that a lot of what you see in many state universities is not in the interest of the community. It's the people for which those universities have been built have now become professors and researchers that are very alienated from the students and then work in separate places and don't even get to see the student. That to me is a fundamental problem that the community shouldn't be happy about. But the community has no real voice.
Well,
okay.
You haven't been to the University of California.
Well,
in Chapman, maybe they don't have a voice, but I'll tell you something.
Zero voice
the community has a real voice inside the university.
Well, gentlemen, we could go on, and if this wasn't Chapman and UCI, if it was like USC and UCLA, then we could talk about the impact of college sports on education. But that's a whole other.
I'm glad that we don't have that. I'm very happy to say we have Division III. I'm proud.
Stay that way.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, anyways, thanks again. That's it for now. Thanks again to our guests, Don Barnes, David Harrington, Duke Nguyen, Manuel Gomez, and Daniele Struppa. You can watch this show and past shows by going to pbssocal.org or rickreiff.com. You can also catch our shows and our post-show open mic chatter on YouTube. And follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again on Inside OC. Inside OC is brought to you by
Each new community 5 Point brings to life represents a promise delivered. Great neighborhoods are more than just places to live, they are places to connect. 5 Point is a proud sponsor of public television and community programming.
All your life, people talk about what's best for you. But to most people, it's just that. Talk. Unless you're with MemorialCare, a healthcare system devoted to one important thing: what's best for you.